The police detective pushed a photo across the table toward me, my twins' nursery, or what was left of it. Blackened walls, melted plastic from their cribs, their favorite stuffed animals reduced to ash. The room where I'd sung them to sleep just hours before was completely destroyed. "Mrs. Hartley," Detective Walsh said, his voice cold and measured, "I need you to explain something to me. Your neighbors confirm you left your house at 2 p.m. The fire started at 2:20. You were 3 blocks away when your 18-month-old twins were trapped inside a burning house. Help me understand that." My hands shook as I stared at the photo. Milo's blue elephant, the one he wouldn't sleep without, was a charred lump in the corner. Felix's musical mobile, which played "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" every night, had melted into the ceiling. "I went to get their prescription," I managed to say, my throat raw from screaming at the fire scene. My brother Tommy was watching them. He promised me they were safe. "Your brother." The detective tapped his pen against his notepad. "The same brother who's been living in your garage apartment rent-free? The one with significant gambling debts?" Before I could answer, the door opened. Fire Chief Rodriguez entered with a small figure behind him. My 7-year-old niece, Penny, stood there in her purple jacket, the one with unicorns on it that she'd worn to school that morning. Her face was streaked with tears. Her small hands clutched around her stuffed rabbit mister. "Hoppy." "Detective Walsh," Chief Rodriguez said quietly, "this young lady has something she needs to tell us." Penny stepped forward, her brown eyes moving from face to face in the interrogation room. Her father, my brother Tommy, sat in the corner with his lawyer, his jaw clenched tight. My mother Diane sat beside me, gripping my hand so hard her nails dug into my palm. Penny looked directly at the fire chief and spoke in a clear, small voice that would change everything. "Should I tell you about the matches Uncle Tommy threw through the window?" The room exploded. Tommy jumped to his feet. His lawyer grabbed his arm. The detective's pen stopped moving. My mother gasped, and I felt the world tilt because suddenly every strange thing about that afternoon clicked into place like pieces of a horrible puzzle. "I saw everything from the garage apartment window," Penny continued, her voice getting stronger. "Daddy made me promise not to tell. But my teacher, Miss Johnson, says keeping bad secrets hurts good people. And Aunt Vera is good people. So are baby Milo and baby Felix. That's when I knew. My brother, the person I'd trusted with my children's lives, had tried to kill them. And his 7-year-old daughter was about to save us all. Life as a single mother of twins meant my days started before sunrise. But I wouldn't trade those early morning moments for anything. At 6 a.m. sharp, Milo would call out, "Mama," from his crib, his voice bright and cheerful, like he'd been waiting all night just to say that word. Within seconds, Felix would join in with his signature giggle, the one that sounded like pure sunshine. Their nursery, painted soft yellow with clouds I'd stenciled myself during my pregnancy, would fill with the sounds of my boys ready to tackle another day. That Tuesday morning felt completely normal. I shuffled into their room wearing my old college sweatshirt, the one with formula stains that had become my unofficial mom uniform. Milo reached up immediately, his chubby arms stretching toward me, while Felix stood in his crib practicing his newest skill, bouncing while holding the rails. "Good morning, my loves," I whispered, scooping Milo up first, then Felix. The three of us had our routine down perfectly. Diaper changes, warm bottles, and then our morning dance party in the living room to whatever song came on my phone. That morning, it was an old Beatles song, "Here Comes the Sun," and Felix clapped off beat while Milo swayed in my arms. My mother, Diane, arrived at 7:30, letting herself in with her spare key. She took one look at me and shook her head with that mixture of concern and love only mothers can master. "Vera, sweetheart, when's the last time you actually slept through the night?" "The boys are teething," I explained, handing her Felix while I settled Milo in his high chair. "And Felix has that ear infection, so he's been waking up every 2 hours. "You can't keep running on empty," Mom said, touching my cheek with her free hand. "You're doing an amazing job, but even superheroes need rest." I wanted to tell her that rest was a luxury I couldn't afford, not since Brett walked out 8 months ago, leaving nothing but a note that said he wasn't ready for this life. Not since I'd been juggling my work-from-home marketing job with raising twins alone. But complaining wouldn't change anything, so I just smiled and started preparing the boys' breakfast, mashed bananas with rice cereal. their current favorite. Tommy emerged from the garage apartment around 8 a.m., looking disheveled as always. My older brother had moved in 3 months ago after his latest business venture, some kind of import-export scheme, had collapsed spectacularly. He'd shown up at my door with 2 suitcases and that crooked smile that had gotten him out of trouble since we were kids. "Just for a few weeks, Vera," he'd promised, "until I get back on my feet." Those few weeks had turned into months, but I couldn't turn him away. He was family, and despite his flaws, he'd been trying to help with the twins. Or so I thought. "Morning, sis," Tommy mumbled, heading straight for my coffee maker. "Penny's coming over after school today, right?" "Of course," I said. Tommy's 7-year-old daughter stayed with us every other weekend and some weekdays since her mother had moved to Portland for work. Penny was a bright spot in our chaotic household, always eager to help with the twins, reading them stories and her animated voice even though they were too young to understand the plots. "Aunt Vera, can I feed Milo?" Penny had asked just last weekend, her face serious with responsibility. "I promise I'll be super careful." She'd sat there for 20 minutes, patiently spooning cereal into Milo's mouth, wiping his chin after every bite, singing little songs when he got fussy. Felix would watch from his high chair, mesmerized by his older cousin's presence. That Tuesday morning, Tommy seemed agitated. He kept checking his phone, pacing around the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets without taking anything out. "You okay?" I asked, bouncing Felix on my hip while Milo played with measuring cups on the floor. "Fine," Tommy said quickly. "Hey, you still have that homeowner's insurance policy we talked about? The one you told me to increase last month?" "Yes, why?" "Just making sure you're protected," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Single mom, 2 babies. You need good coverage." "Smart that you increased it to include full replacement value." Mom and I exchanged glances. Tommy giving financial advice was like a fox advising about henhouse security. "I need you to watch the boys this afternoon," I told him. "Just for an hour. They need their antibiotics from the pharmacy, and the wait is always shorter on Tuesday afternoons." "No problem," Tommy said, suddenly very interested in his phone again. "What time?" "Around 2 p.m. They'll be down for their nap, so you just need to be here in case they wake up." I should have noticed the way he smiled then, quick and calculating. I should have paid attention to Mom's worried expression, but I was tired, overwhelmed, and grateful for any help I could get. At 1:45 p.m., I tucked both boys into their cribs. Milo went down easily, already rubbing his eyes and clutching his blue elephant. Felix fought it a little, standing up twice before I rubbed his back and hummed our special song until his breathing deepened. Their nursery was perfectly cool, the windows cracked open just enough to let in fresh air. I kissed each of their foreheads and whispered, "I love you," before closing the door softly. Tommy was in the living room, sprawled on my couch with his phone. "They're down," I told him. "Milo has his elephant, Felix has his blanket. They should sleep until at least 3:30. "Got it," he said without looking up. "Take your time at the pharmacy." I know the lines can be long. Something felt off about how casual he was being, but I grabbed my keys and purse anyway. The boys needed their antibiotics, and the prescription had already been delayed twice. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Tommy watching from the window. He waved, then disappeared back inside. The pharmacy was only 3 blocks away, a quick drive down Maple Street past the elementary school and the park where I took the boys every morning. I parked and went inside, grateful to see only 2 people ahead of me in line. Maybe I'd actually get back before the boys woke up. At 2:24 p.m., my phone erupted. Not rang, not buzzed, but erupted with call after call. Unknown numbers, my neighbor's number, numbers I didn't recognize. Then Mom's name flashed across the screen. "Vera!" Her scream was so loud I dropped my purse. "The house is on fire! The fire department is here, but the babies, oh God, the babies!" I don't remember leaving the pharmacy. I don't remember if I ran red lights or nearly hit pedestrians. I just remember arriving at my street and seeing black smoke billowing into the perfect blue sky, exactly where my house should be. Fire trucks blocked the road. Neighbors stood in clusters on their lawns. And the smoke, God, the smoke was pouring from the nursery windows. "My babies!" I screamed, abandoning my car in the middle of the street and running toward the house. "Milo! Felix!" Fire Chief Rodriguez caught me before I could get to the door. "Ma'am, we have firefighters inside. We're getting them out." The nursery is in the back left corner, I sobbed, fighting against his grip. 2 cribs, they're only 18 months old, please, please. Tommy appeared from the crowd of neighbors, his face twisted with rage. He grabbed my shoulders hard enough to leave bruises. "Where were you, Vera? Where were you?" "You were watching them," I screamed back. "You promised you were watching them." "I stepped out for 1 minute to check the mail," he announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. 1 minute! If you'd been here like a real mother should be, this wouldn't have happened, Mrs. Chen from next door whispered to Mrs. Patterson, but loud enough for me to hear. "She's always leaving those babies. Always working. Always running errands. Poor little things." "That's not true." I wanted to scream at them, but my voice was gone, lost in the smoke and terror. Tommy continued his performance, tears streaming down his face. "What kind of mother abandons her babies? You knew Felix was sick. You knew they needed you. But you had to leave, didn't you? Always leaving." 2 firefighters emerged from the smoke-carrying bundles. My knees gave out. Milo was coughing, his little face covered in soot, but his eyes were open. Felix was limp in the other firefighter's arms, an oxygen mask already over his tiny face. "They're alive," Chief Rodriguez said. "The windows being open saved them." The smoke could escape instead of filling the room completely. Paramedics swarmed around my boys, checking their airways, listening to their lungs. I tried to go to them, but Detective Walsh stepped in front of me. "Mrs. Hartley, I need to ask you some questions. The fire appears to have started in the nursery. Your brother says you've been under tremendous stress. Your neighbors confirm you left the children frequently." "I left them with their uncle for 1 hour," I protested. "Your brother mentioned you've been struggling financially," the detective continued. "Says you were crying last week. About medical bills. We've found traces of accelerant near the window. This fire was deliberately set." Mom pushed through the crowd, her face pale. "This is insane. Vera would never hurt her babies." "Mrs. Hartley increased her homeowner's insurance policy last month," Tommy added, his voice heavy with implication. "Doubled the coverage specifically for fire damage." The detective's expression hardened. "Is that true?" "Tommy told me to," I said. "He said with 2 babies I needed better coverage." But I could see it in everyone's faces. The overwhelmed single mother, the conveniently timed errand, the increased insurance policy, the fire that started in the nursery while I was gone. They'd already decided I was guilty. The hospital's pediatric intensive care unit became my entire world for the next 3 hours. Milo had been treated and released after an hour, his lungs clear enough that he only needed monitoring. He clung to me like a koala, his little fingers twisted in my hair, occasionally coughing but otherwise alert. Felix wasn't as lucky. The smoke had affected him more severely, and doctors kept him on oxygen while running test after test on his tiny lungs. Detective Walsh set up his interrogation in a small conference room just down the hall from Felix's room. He wasn't letting me out of his sight, and 2 uniformed officers stood guard at the door. The message was clear. I was their prime suspect. "Walk me through your finances, Mrs. Hartley," Walsh said, spreading papers across the table. "Your ex-husband stopped child support 3 months ago. You're behind on your mortgage. The twins' medical bills are substantial." "Yes, things are tight," I admitted, holding Milo tighter as he dozed against my chest. "But I would never hurt my children for money. Never." "Your brother paints a different picture," Walsh continued. "He says you broke down crying last Thursday, saying you couldn't handle it anymore. Says you mentioned how much easier life was before the twins." "That's not what I said." My voice cracked with frustration. "I said I missed when life was easier before Brett left. There's a difference between acknowledging that single parenthood is hard and wanting to harm my children." Mom sat beside me, her hand on my back. "Detective, I've watched Vera with those boys every single day. She would die for them. This is insane. The fire investigator found accelerant traces by the nursery window," Walsh pressed on. "Someone poured lighter fluid or gasoline along the windowsill. The fire was intentional. Mrs. Hartley. If not you, then who?" Tommy entered the room then, Penny trailing behind him. She was still in her school uniform, the purple jumper she'd picked out that morning, but her face was blotchy from crying. She clutched her stuffed rabbit mister, Hoppy, like a lifeline. Penny wanted to see that the babies were okay, Tommy announced, pulling out a chair with unnecessary force. She's been traumatized by all this. Haven't you, sweetheart? Penny nodded but didn't speak. Her eyes darted between her father and me, then to baby Milo sleeping in my arms. Something in her expression made me look closer. Her lips were moving slightly like she was practicing words she was afraid to say. It's interesting, Mr. Hartley, Detective Walsh said, turning his attention to Tommy. You claim you were checking the mail when the fire started, but your mailbox is at the end of the driveway, visible from the street. Mrs. Chen says she didn't see you there. She must have missed me, Tommy said smoothly. Everything happened so fast, people get confused in emergencies. Daddy, Penny whispered, but Tommy shot her a look that made her shrink back. I watched my niece carefully. She was pressing Mister. Hoppy's ears flat, something she only did when she was extremely upset. Last month, she'd done the same thing when she'd accidentally broken my favorite mug and was scared to tell me. Penny, sweetheart, I said gently, despite Walsh's sharp look telling me to stay quiet. Are you okay? This must have been so scary for you. She looked at me with those big brown eyes, so much like her father's but holding none of his calculated coldness. Aunt Vera, are Milo and Felix going to be okay? Yes, baby. They're going to be fine. Good, she whispered. I was so scared when I saw the fire from the window. Tommy's hand landed on her shoulder. You were in the front yard, remember, Penny? Playing hopscotch like I told you. Right, Penny said quietly. The front yard. Fire Chief Rodriguez entered the room carrying his preliminary report. Detective, we need to discuss the fire pattern. It's unusual. The accelerant was definitely applied from outside, thrown through the open window. But here's what's strange. Whoever did this knew exactly which room was the nursery and knew the windows would be open. I always crack the windows during nap time, I said, for fresh air. Everyone knows that. Everyone, Walsh repeated, looking between Tommy and me. So anyone close to the family would know the nursery windows would be open at nap time. Penny's grip on Mister. Hoppy tightened. She looked at Chief Rodriguez's uniform, at his badge, at the official fire department insignia on his jacket. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at her father, whose jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. Sir, Penny said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the tension. She tugged on Chief Rodriguez's coat. Sir, I need to tell you something. The room went completely still. Tommy's hand tightened on Penny's shoulder, but she stepped away from him, moving closer to the fire chief. What is it, sweetheart? Rodriguez asked, kneeling down to her level. Penny looked at her father one more time, then back at the chief. Her next words came out in a rush, like water breaking through a dam. Should I tell you about the matches Uncle Tommy threw through the window? Penny's voice was small but clear, each word dropping into the silence like a stone into still water. Tommy's face went white, then red. Penny, you're confused, baby. You don't know what you're saying. I'm not confused, Daddy. Penny stepped closer to Chief Rodriguez, putting distance between herself and her father. You told me not to tell anyone. You said it was our secret. But Miss Johnson at school says secrets that hurt people are bad secrets, and we should tell a trusted adult. Detective Walsh slowly stood up, his hand moving to his radio. Penny, I need you to tell us exactly what you saw. Now, can you do that? Penny nodded, hugging Mister. Hoppy tighter. I was in the garage apartment doing my homework. Daddy said to stay there and watch cartoons, but I wanted to see if Aunt Vera needed help with the babies before she left. That's when I saw Daddy on his phone. Penny, stop, Tommy commanded, but two officers stepped closer to him. You were talking to someone named Derek, Penny continued, her voice growing stronger. You said, it's happening today. You'll get your money by Friday. Then you hung up and went to the kitchen. My blood turned cold. Derek was Tommy's bookie, the one who'd been threatening him for weeks over a $20,000 debt. I'd overheard the calls, the increasingly violent threats. You took the long matches from the drawer, Penny said, tears rolling down her cheeks. The ones Grandma uses for her candles. You put them in your pocket with something in a small bottle. Then you went outside. She's making this up, Tommy shouted, trying to stand, but the officers held him down. Kids have wild imaginations. I followed you to the window, Penny continued, her eyes never leaving Chief Rodriguez's face. You looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then you poured the stuff from the bottle on the window ledge. It smelled really bad, like when Daddy fixes cars. Gasoline, Chief Rodriguez said quietly. Penny nodded. Then you lit the matches and threw them inside. The curtains caught fire really fast. You threw 3 more matches to make sure. Then you ran to the front of the house and pretended to check the mail. Detective Walsh pulled out his phone, showing a timeline. The 911 call came from Mrs. Chen at 2:24 p.m. Mr. Hartley, you claim you discovered the fire at 2:20 p.m. Why didn't you call immediately? I was in shock, Tommy stammered. I ran to get the babies. No, you didn't, Penny cried out. You stood there watching. You said, let it burn a little more. You were timing it on your phone. You only ran toward the house when Mrs. Chen came outside screaming. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tommy, you waited? You let it burn with the babies inside? You said Aunt Vera needed to learn a lesson, Penny continued, the words pouring out now. You said she'd get insurance money and you'd get your share for helping with the babies. You said she was too tired to take care of them anyway, that this would be better for everyone. You're twisting everything, Tommy shouted, but panic filled his eyes. Detective Walsh pulled out Tommy's phone from the evidence bag. We'll need your passcode, Mr. Hartley. I want a lawyer, Tommy said quickly. Daddy made me promise not to tell, Penny said, looking at me now. He said if I told anyone, we'd have to move away and I'd never see Milo and Felix again. But then at the hospital, I saw how scared you were, Aunt Vera. And I saw how tiny Felix looked with that mask on his face. And I knew I had to tell the truth. Walsh's phone buzzed. He read the screen and his expression darkened. Mr. Hartley, we just accessed your bank records. You received 3 cash deposits totaling $5,000 in the past week. Want to explain that? That's from freelance work, Tommy said weakly. Daddy doesn't have a job, Penny said quietly. He told someone on the phone that he borrowed it from bad people who would hurt him if he didn't pay it back. Chief Rodriguez stood up. The pour pattern, the timing, knowing the windows would be open, it all fits. Mr. Hartley, you set fire to your sister's house with your nephews inside to collect insurance money to pay off gambling debts. She would have gotten them out, Tommy exploded, pointing at me. The windows were open. I knew the smoke would go out. I wasn't trying to kill them, just scare everyone enough for the insurance to pay out. Vera needed the money, too. The medical bills, the mortgage. She was drowning. The confession hung in the air. Detective Walsh nodded to the officers, who pulled out handcuffs. Thomas Hartley, you're under arrest for arson, attempted murder, child endangerment, and insurance fraud. As they cuffed him, Tommy looked at Penny with pure rage. You ruined everything. You ruined our family. No, Daddy, Penny said, her small voice steady. You did that when you tried to hurt the babies. Tommy was arrested that night and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, arson, child endangerment, and insurance fraud. The detective later told me they found extensive searches on his laptop about house fires, accelerants that leave minimal trace, and how long smoke inhalation takes to be fatal in infants. He'd been planning this for 3 weeks, right after Derek's final threat to break his legs if he didn't pay up. The twins recovered fully, though the effects lingered in unexpected ways. Felix, my brave little fighter, spent 3 days in the hospital before his oxygen levels stabilized. For months afterward, he'd panic during thunderstorms, the rumbling sound too similar to the roar of flames. Milo became clingy, refusing to nap unless I was in the room with him. The pediatric therapist said it was normal trauma response, that babies remember more than we think they do. We moved in with Mom immediately. Our house on Maple Street was salvageable, but I couldn't bring myself to live there while it was being rebuilt. Every time I drove past, I saw black smoke pouring from those nursery windows. The insurance company, after the criminal investigation cleared me completely, covered everything. They even added safety features I'd never thought to ask for. Windows with special locks that can't be accessed from outside, interconnected smoke detectors in every room, and security cameras covering every angle of the property. But the biggest change in our lives was Penny. The court gave me emergency custody that same night. Tommy's ex-wife flew in from Portland, and we sat in my mother's living room working out the details while Penny slept upstairs between Milo and Felix's cribs, as if guarding them. I travel 3 weeks out of every month, Marissa said, tears streaming down her face. I knew Tommy had problems, but I never imagined he'd do something like this. Penny needs stability. She needs you, Vera. So my family of 3 became 4. Penny started therapy the following week with Dr. Martinez, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. For the first month, she barely spoke about what happened. Then one day, she came home from school with a drawing. It showed our family, but instead of the fire, she'd drawn all of us surrounded by yellow light. That's our guardian angel shield, she explained. It protects us from bad people, even if they're related to us. The trial was brutal. Tommy's lawyer tried to paint him as a desperate father who made a terrible mistake, but the evidence was overwhelming. The text messages to Derek about the insurance money, the Google searches, the gasoline receipt from an hour before the fire, and most damning of all, Penny's testimony, delivered via closed-circuit video so she wouldn't have to face her father in court. He got 15 years. Last week was the 1-year anniversary of the fire. We're back in our rebuilt house now, the one with all the safety features. Penny has her own room decorated in purple and silver, her choice. The twins share the new nursery, painted green this time because Penny said yellow might remind them of the fire, even if they don't consciously remember. That morning, Penny helped me make pancakes for breakfast. She's 8 now, taller and more confident. She still carries Mister. Hoppy sometimes, but mostly he sits on her bookshelf, watching over her room. Aunt Vera, she said, flipping a pancake with surprising skill. Do you think Daddy thinks about us? I'm sure he does, sweetheart, I answered honestly. We'd learned that truth, even when it's hard, is always better than comfortable lies. I think about him too, she said. Not in a sad way anymore, just in a I hope he gets better way. Dr. Martinez says that's healthy. Milo toddled into the kitchen then, dragging his beloved blue elephant, now replaced with an identical one. Penny, up, he demanded, and she scooped him up with practiced ease. You saved us, you know, I told her, watching her bounce, Milo on her hip. You were the bravest person in that room. I was really scared, she admitted, but being scared and doing the right thing anyway is what makes someone brave, right? That's what you told me. She was right. I had told her that during one of many conversations about that day. We don't hide from what happened. We face it, process it, and grow stronger from it. The truth is, evil doesn't always look like a monster in the shadows. Sometimes it looks like your brother at Sunday dinner, asking about insurance policies while planning your destruction. Sometimes it's the person who should protect you counting the minutes while your house burns, calculating how much damage equals the biggest payout. But courage doesn't always look like a superhero either. Sometimes it's a 7-year-old girl with a stuffed rabbit, pulling on a fire chief's coat and speaking 8 words that save 3 lives. Sometimes it's choosing truth over blood, right over family loyalty, protection over silence. Penny lost her father that day, but she saved her family. She taught me that the smallest voice in the room often speaks the loudest truth. That integrity isn't about age, but about character. That a 7-year-old can understand what a 35-year-old man never could. Family means protecting each other, not profiting from each other's pain. If you found value in this story, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when someone unexpected showed incredible courage in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit, especially in our darkest moments. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes heroes come in the smallest packages, carrying stuffed rabbits and wearing purple unicorn jackets.